Hi, welcome back aboard the Earthmote. I'm Randall. Today we're diving into a topic that can really bring your sandbox campaigns to life in an incredibly dynamic way that's not really often talked about. And that's the idea of seasonality in your sandbox. Now, we're not just going to talk about cosmetic changes, how summer shifts to autumn. I think we really want to explore how these shifting seasons, how they affect weather patterns, how the different terrain types are affected, and how that creates unique challenges, opportunities, and emergent narratives for your players. Imagine this: your intrepid adventurers are tracking a goblin raiding party. But it's not just about finding their lair. It's late autumn. The forest is thick with fallen leaves, making moving stealthily difficult, but also following tracks hard to do. The wind carries a biting chill, reminding them that winter is just around the corner, and they need to secure some more supplies. It's getting harder to forage in the wilds as the season shifts away from summer. This isn't just flavor, it's a tangible element that really can affect the party's choices and the very fabric of their adventure. So let's go ahead and talk about how the changing of the seasons is going to change our games. To start our discussion on the seasons, I think we should begin with our most obvious element, and that is the weather. But beyond simple rain or shine, dynamic weather can dramatically impact exploration and encounters for the party. I think you can and should vary your temperatures, weather, and storm patterns at different times during the year within your different locations. Winter is a classic example of a troubling time for adventurers. A seemingly straightforward journey over a mountain range becomes a desperate struggle for survival when a sudden blizzard descends. Visibility drops to zero, strong winds threaten to blow the party off the precarious paths, and biting cold chips away at their resources and resolve. Now, let's layer in how these seasons transform these terrains and open up new possibilities of adventure. First, looking at spring, I think after a harsh winter, the spring thaw is going to bring those raging rivers. Roads are going to be muddy, and potentially unstable ground or mudslides in mountainous regions could occur. Previous frozen lakes and rivers become navigable, but you do need boats to do it instead of walking across ice. It does open up new trade routes or faster routes and avenues for exploration. The meltwater might also reveal previous things hidden under snow and ice that could be ancient ruins, maybe forgotten supply caches, or even long dormant creatures. Next, we have the idea of summer. Summer can be a time of plenty. You have your lush forests and your bountiful harvest, but it can also bring oppressive heat and drought. A parched landscape means that water sources become vital and harder to find, forcing players to think about how they are going to survive in new ways or possibly carry more water with them. Wildfires can become a genuine threat, shaping the environment and potentially displacing populations. Maybe it reveals new areas as the flame clears undergrowth, but it can also move monsters to areas they would not otherwise occupy, causing problems for the people who already live there. As mentioned, autumn brings falling leaves, making stealthy tricky, but perhaps also provides a bit more natural cover for ambushes. I think autumn really leans into the themes of chill and decay. The crisp air can be invigorating, but the rapidly shortening days mean less time for travel and more time vulnerable in the dark. The decay of the harvest season can create that atmosphere of impending scarcity, driving desperate acts by bandits or monsters that are lacking in supplies heading into winter. Speaking of winter, it fundamentally alters your landscape. Frozen lakes and rivers create those new walkable pathways, but they also create new dangers. Snow drifts can bury roads and settlements, isolating communities and making travel arduous, if not impossible. Resources are going to be scarce, and the primary objective in winter shifts to survival and finding warmth. But winter can also reveal hidden paths once obscured by foliage or make certain areas like icy caves up the cliffside accessible for the first time if a snowdrift now allows the party to access it. I think kind of stepping beyond the seasonal component for a bit, I do also like the idea of implementing time of day elements as well. Think about a morning fog hanging over a forest or swamp. That can turn a familiar terrain into a disorienting labyrinth. In a swamp, it could conceal lurking creatures. It's going to make navigation by landmarks really hard or impossible, and it creates that kind of eerie, suspenseful atmosphere. Along a coastline, fog can hide pirate ships, conceal treacherous rocks, or even mythical sea creatures lurking below the depths. That can make any voyage into the mists a gamble. You can also do things like lunar doors opening only at night under the presence of moonlight, or sticking with the moon, maybe the shifting tides reveal or conceal entrances to a cave network that's only accessible at certain times of the day. Next, let's talk about some less obvious, but I think equally impactful seasonal shifts that you can employ in your sandboxes. The first is the idea of monster migratory patterns. Just like on Earth, fantasy creatures can have migration patterns tied to the seasons. Perhaps goblins in the mountains descend to the warmer lowlands during the winter and increase their raids on farming communities in that time of year. Or maybe a terrifying beast hibernates in a particular cave system during your cold months, only to emerge ravenous and territorial in the spring. This can create natural quest hooks and explain changes in your monster populations. Next, we have the idea of magical fluctuations. In many fantasy settings, magic is not static. Perhaps certain ley lines become more potent during the summer solstice, or ancient rituals require the alignment of celestial bodies only visible in winter. This could mean things like certain spells are more powerful or easier to cast seasonally. Maybe specific magical ingredients are only available at certain times of the year. Maybe magic portals or hidden enchantments only activate during particular seasons, opening up to new areas or challenges. Or perhaps you have veils between worlds that become thin, maybe during autumn, and that can make planar travel easier or increase the likelihood of encounters with fae or elemental spirits. Next, think a little bit about resource availability, but beyond just food and water. You should think about other resources as well. Maybe specific herbs for potions, they might only be available seasonally, making it more difficult to acquire those ingredients later on. Or if you allow potions to be bought, the prices go up later in the season, or just become less available entirely. Rare minerals might be easier to mine when the ground isn't frozen solid. If you think about gold miners up in Alaska, they only mine during the summer and they have a very short season to do that. You could definitely implement that in your games. Certain animal hides or furs are more valuable in winter, and this could drive economic factors and inspire specific quests for materials. Lastly, seasons don't just affect the wilderness, they affect civilization too. They can definitely have changes in your social and political landscape. Think about festivals and holidays. Those are obviously tied to times of year and seasonal components. A harvest festival in autumn could be a backdrop for intrigue, maybe a joyous occasion turned sour, or a chance for unique social encounters. A winter solstice celebration might involve ancient rites or traditions that the players get to witness for the first time. Think about trade routes. Some trade routes might become impassable in winter, forcing merchants to take longer, more dangerous paths, or just not come at all. This could create opportunities for banditry or drive up prices for certain goods in these cut off, isolated towns. And then lastly, think about warfare. Historically, wars are paused in winter. A sudden early winter could halt a siege, giving the defenders a reprieve, or it could trap the sieging army in hostile territory. Conversely, a mild winter might allow a campaign to continue longer than anticipated by the parties involved. So, how do you weave all of this seasonality into your game without feeling like homework or an overwhelming mass of things to control? Well, first, I would say just start small. You don't need to build up that complex seasonal calendar from day one. Pick one or two of these elements to focus on. Maybe you're just tracking the general season and how it affects travel. And then later you can add in a seasonal festival and how that affects your political intrigue. But just start small and then you can build from there. Secondly, definitely use your visual and sensory descriptions when you're trying to immerse your players. Describe the biting wind, maybe the muddy tracks in spring, the crunch of snow underfoot in winter, the oppressive humidity in summer. Use all of your senses to paint these pictures for your players to give them a sense of how these things might be affecting their characters and affecting kind of the macro level landscape as well. Third, don't forget about how these things are going to drive player agency. Present these seasonal challenges as problems for your players to solve. You don't just tell them the mountain pass is impassable in winter. Show them a blizzard that hit it and ask them, what are they going to do? Do they want to wait it out? Are they going to try a different route to get through? Or are they going to use some sort of magic to try to melt their way through? Fourth, think about your random encounter tables. You should adjust those based on the season. Maybe a summer forest is going to have more fey creatures that roam the woods, whereas in winter you might have, hungry wolves and frost giants that descend down from the mountains. And lastly, I would encourage some long-term planning in your players. Encourage them to think seasonally. If they know winter is coming, then they might want to prioritize securing that winter gear or finding some safe shelter points or finishing that urgent quest before travel to that area becomes impossible. I think if you can implement some of those components into your game, you're going to really see how seasonality can sort of shift your game and drive the world forward and make those interesting choices for your players. By incorporating seasonality into your sandbox, you create a world that feels alive, dynamic, and reactive. It adds that layer of verisimilitude and challenge that goes beyond just monster stats and dungeon layouts. It forces your players to think creatively, adapt their strategies, and truly engage with the environment. It turns that mere backdrop into an active participant in your emergent storytelling. So, what are your favorite ways to use seasons in your games? Have you had any memorable seasonal challenges that your parties have had to face? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content in the future. Consider checking out Enchanted Nimbus, my monthly newsletter. Thanks for hopping aboard the Earthmote. I'll see you in the next one.